Well, I got some interesting results that came up with the personality test. I got some interesting result that came up with the personality test. It gave me an overall analysis of my personality. It gave me an overall analysis of my personality. Now, of course, this wasn't a scientific test. Of course, this wasn't a scientific test. Of course, this wasn't a scientific test. I didn't meet with trained psychologist.
Do you have this kind of hat that you wear, and it's kind of like performing, you know? It's like you're having to put on, I wouldn't say a show, but I still think it's part of your personality, but it's just a different part that you use for that thing, whatever it may be. But Andrew, I wanted to ask you, what part of your personality do you like the best? I know you said you didn't agree with the profile. You're like, that's not me, I don't do that. But after reading it, what part do you like best about that profile that you have, or the personality that you have?
Well, I got some interesting results that came up with the personality test. It gave me an overall analysis of my personality. Now, of course, this wasn't a scientific test. I didn't meet with trained psychologists or anything. This was
psychologists or anything. I didn't meet with trained psychologists or anything. I didn't meet with trained psychologist or anything. This was just like one of those things that you do on the internet in 10 minutes. This was just like one of those things that you do on the internet in 10 minutes. 그냥 인터넷에서 10분이면 할 수 있는 거였어. This was just one of those things. 인터넷 같은 데서 할 수 있는 것 중에 하나였어. This was just one of those things that you do on the internet in 10 minutes. 10분 정도면 할 수 있는 거였어. Just answering some basic questions. 그냥 just answering some basic questions. This was just one of those things that you do on the internet in 10 minutes. This was just one of those things that you do on the internet in 10 minutes. This was just one of those things. 그런 것들 중에 하나였어. 인터넷에서 그냥 10분이면 할 수 있는 것들 중에 하나였어. This was just one of those things that you do on the internet in 10 minutes.
It's just like one of those things that you do on the internet in 10
You do on the internet in 10 minutes.
Just answering some basic questions.
I'm
not going to
like best. I know you said you didn't agree with the profile. You're like, that's not me, I don't do that.
I don't
but
do
after
that.
reading it, what part do you like best about that profile that you have, or the personality that you have?
Well, I got some interesting results that came up with the personality test. It gave me an overall analysis of my personality. Now, of course, this wasn't a scientific test. I didn't meet with trained psychologists or anything. This was just like one of those things that you do on the internet in 10 minutes, just answering some.
This was just like one of those things that you do on the internet in 10 minutes. Just answering some basic questions. So I'm not going to say that my test results are in any way scientific. I'm not going to say that my test results are scientific. Anyway.
Basic questions. So I'm not going to say that my test results are in any way scientific, but
in any way scientific. I'm not going to say that my test results are in any way scientific. But I do think that they describe me to an extent. 근데 나를 어느 정도까지는 설명을 했어. 나에 대해서 어느 정도까지는 했다. I think that they describe me. 어느 정도까지는 나에 대해서 설명을 했다. Describe me. I think that they describe me to an extent. I think they describe me to an extent. 어느 정도까지는 to an extent. To an extent. 어느 정도까지는 to an extent. I think they describe me to an extent. 어느 정도까지 to an extent. To an extent. To an extent. 어느 정도까지? I don't know, maybe to an extent. Maybe to an extent. I don't know, maybe to an extent. 어느 정도까지? You have to almost admire her to an extent. 어느 정도는 You have to admire him to an extent. 어느 정도까지는 해야 돼요. To an extent. To an extent. To an extent. That's true to an extent. 그 어느 정도까지는 사실이야. That's true to an extent. 어느 정도까지는 사실이야. 어느 정도까지는 to an extent. To an extent. To an extent. And some things that I liked about it. 제가 좀 마음에 드는 몇 가지 부분들은 Some things that I liked about it was that I got 0% on the psychopathy result, which was reassuring.
I do think that they describe me to an extent.
To an extent.
And some things that I liked about it was
Some things that I liked about it. 제 마음에 드는 부분은 Some things that 마음에 드는 어떤 것. Some things that I liked about it. And some things that I liked about it was that I got
0% on the psychopathy result.
Psychopathy. Some things that I liked about it. Some things that I liked about it. 그 마음에 들었던 부분은 Some things that I liked about it was that I got 0% on the psychopathy result. 패스 결과가 0%였어. Some things that I liked about it was I got 0% on the psychopathy result, which was reassuring. You know, sometimes I feel like maybe I have my emotions buried too deep inside. And sometimes maybe I'm not as caring as I could be. I'm not as caring as I could be, and not as empathetic as I could be. 막 동정심 있지도 않고, 배려하지도 않고. However, I guess as I get older, I'm getting a little softer. As I get older, 나이가 들면서, as I get older, I'm getting a little softer, to be honest. But to see 0% there, that was just nice. 그냥 좋았어. That was just nice. 그냥 좋았어. That was just nice. To see, 그냥 보니까 that was just nice. 그냥 좋았어. That was just nice. One thing that I didn't like about my result was 제가 마음에 안 들었던 거 한 가지는 one thing that I didn't like about my result is that 이렇게 말한 거였어. One thing that I didn't like about my result was one thing that I didn't like about my result. 결과에 대해서 One thing that I didn't like about my result. One thing that I didn't like about my result. One thing that I didn't like about my result. One thing that I didn't like about my results. One thing that I didn't like about my result is that I am statistically prone to stress 87% higher than the general population.
Which was reassuring. You know, sometimes
I
feel like maybe I have my
emotions
buried too deep inside.
I feel like maybe I have my emotions buried too deep inside.
And sometimes
I'm
not
as caring as I could be, and not as empathetic as could be.
However, I guess
as
I get older,
I'm
I'm
getting
getting
a little
softer,
softer, to be honest.
To see 0% there, that was
to see 0% there,
just nice.
That was just nice.
The thing that I didn't like about my results was it said.
One thing that I didn't like about my results that
I am statistically prone to stress. 87% higher than the general population.
One thing that I didn't like about my result is that I'm prone to stress. 스트레스 받기 쉽다는 부분이었어. I'm prone to stress 87% higher than the general population. 일반인들보다. So that is not great.
Wow. So that is not great.
그건 별로였어. 안 좋았어. That is not great.
Also more prone to mental illness and neuroticism.
And more prone to mental illness and neuroticism. Prone to stress. 그렇구나. More prone to mental illness and neuroticism.
So that's not great.
그것도 별로.
Not the best.
Not
no,
the best.
I think of better things.
I can think of better things.
Not the best. 87% higher chance than the general population.
Not the best. 87% higher chance than the general population. Not the best. 그런 건 아닌데. Not the best. 좋은 건 아니지만 80% higher chance, 더 높은 가능성이 있다. 87% higher chance than the general population. But it did say that I'm 89% more organized than most people who do this. Did it say that? I am. 근데 그거 이렇게 말해줬어. It said that. 이 말했어. It said that I am 89% more organized. 좀 더 계획적이라고. Organized than most people. 대부분의 사람들보다. 또는 than the general population. Than most people who do this. I don't know if that is true or not. 이게 맞는지 모르겠지만 I don't know if 이게 맞는지는 모르겠지만 I don't know if this is true or not. I don't know that is true or not. I don't know if 뭐뭐인지 모르겠지만 I don't know if he is really angry or not. 정말 화난지 아닌지 모르겠지만 I don't know if it was good or not. I don't know if it was difficult or not. I don't know if that is true or not, but I guess I like organization.
But it did say that I'm 89% more organized than most people who do this. I don't know if that is true or not, but I guess I like organization and
organization. I like organization. I like organization. I like organization. And I like routine. My routine 좋아요. I like habits and I like schedules. So whether I actually live by them or not, 그거에 따라 살든 아니든 그렇게 살든 아니든, whether I actually live by them or not, whether I actually live by them or not, whether I actually live by them or not, I'm not sure, but I do enjoy that. And that came out in my result as well. 결과에 나왔어. That came out in my results as well. It also said that I'm very competitive. 나 되게 좀 경쟁심이 있다고 했어. I'm very competitive. I'm very competitive, which I agree with. 내가 동의하는 부분인데, which I agree with. I'm very competitive, which I agree with. Maybe not competitive in a very direct sense. 직접적으로는 긍정적이진 않아요. Like in life, I guess, or my career. I'm not super competitive. 이렇게 막 엄청 competitive한 건 아닌데, I'm not super competitive, but if I'm trying a game with somebody, or I'm playing sports with somebody, or I'm watching sports, I feel very competitive in that kind of situation. 그런 상황에서는 되게 competitive. I'm very competitive in that kind of situation. I feel very 경쟁심을 느껴. I feel very competitive in that kind of situation. I feel very competitive in that kind of situation. I feel competitive in that kind of situation. So I totally agree with that as well. I totally agree with that as well. Interesting. So I wonder where the stress and the things comes from. So I'm looking at the profile here. I'm like, why are you so prone to stress? Maybe it's paying attention to details, and maybe are you a perfectionist, for example? 완벽주의자인가? Maybe are you a perfectionist, for example? I'm not exactly sure. 잘은 모르겠는데. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not exactly sure. Now the test that I did, Anna, was one that I can share with our audience. I will put the link in the episode description. It was an MBTI finder to find what type you are, but it also had some other questions related to different types of psychological tests built in as well. So I think maybe that was part of some questions that were outside of the MBTI, which gave me that result, I think. Organization. Okay. It's a good profile, Andrew. Don't worry, it's a good profile. I mean, all of them are good. They are all very different, and it's nice to hear about different people's. I don't know how they are and their different personalities, but I like the one about schedules, being organized and planning because I'm so like that. I love a plan. Whether I stick to the plan that can be, that's up for debate. That's up for debate. Stick to the plan. Whether I stick to the plan that can be, that's up for debate, but I love a plan. I love a schedule. 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 One big thing for me.
Being organized and planning, because I am so like that. I love a plan. Whether I stick to the plan, that's up for debate, but I love a plan. I love a schedule. One big thing for me is
regarding planning is like traveling or going anywhere. I need to know the plan. I need to know where I'm going. I need to know what time to train is, what time to train is. I need to know where the train's dropping me off or going into. I just those type of things. I'm kind of obsessive about that. 좀 집착하는 편이야. I'm kind of obsessive about that. I'm kind of obsessive about that. 좀 그런 거에 집착하는 편이야. I'm kind of obsessive about that. So we are on the same wavelength with the planning stuff. So we are on the same wavelength with the planning stuff. That's so interesting because when it comes to traveling, I'm with you on the. I want to know where my train is leaving at, what train platform at what time, I'm with you on the. I'm with you. 내가 동의해. I'm with you on the. I want to know where my train is leaving.
Planning is like traveling or going anywhere, I need to
I
know
need to
plan.
know
I need to
plan.
know where I'm
I need to
going.
where I'm
I need
going.
to know what
I
time
need
the
to what
train
time
is.
the train
I need to
is.
know where
I
the
need to where
train's
the train
dropping me off or
dropping me off,
going into. I just
to
those type of things. I'm kind of obsessive
kind of
about that.
obsessive
So
about that.
we're on
So
the same
wavelength
with the planning
with the
stuff.
planning stuff.
That's so interesting because when it comes to traveling, I'm with you on the I want to know where my train is leaving, at what train platform, at what time.
What train platform at what time. I'm with you on the I want to know where my train is leaving, where my train is leaving at, where my train is leaving at, where my train is leaving at, what train platform at what time, what train platform at what time. All of those things, I'm with you on the same page.
All of those things, I'm with you on the same page.
All of those things, I'm with you on the same page. I'm with you on the same page. All of those things, I'm with you on the same page. But that example of traveling is maybe on the same page. I'm with you on the same page. But that example of traveling is interesting. That example of traveling is interesting because I kind of like traveling with no plans. 나는 계획 안 세우고 여행하는 걸 좋아해. I kind of like traveling with no plans. 계획 없이. With no plans. I kind of like traveling with plans. 계획을 세우고 여행하는 걸 좋아해. I kind of like traveling with plans. I kind of like traveling with no plans. 계획 없이 여행하는 걸 좋아해. Having a kind of chaotic travel. Having a kind of chaotic travel where I don't know exactly what's going on. I don't do too much planning when I travel. I don't do too much planning. 계획을 많이 하지 않아. I don't do too much planning. Do plan? I don't do too much plan. I don't do too much planning. I don't do too much planning. I don't do too much planning when I travel. Of course, when I'm going from point A to point B, I like to make sure that's organized. I like to make sure that's organized. But I'd never make like a daily itinerary or something. I'd never make like a daily itinerary. I'd never make a daily itinerary or something like in the morning we're going to the museum and then in the evening we're going to this restaurant. I'd rather just kind of walk around. 차라리 걸어다니. I'd rather just walk around and find something interesting things and let life happen to me. We don't know. Let life happen to me. Let life happen to me. 일이 일어나게 놔둔다. Rather than plan things out. Which has caused some arguments with past travel companions, to be honest. Which has caused some arguments with past travel companions, to be honest. But it's my travel style. It's your travel style. It's your travel style. 여행 스타일이지. It's your travel style. I mean, I don't have like an itinerary. I don't have like an itinerary of each day, but I have to say that when I'm like traveling, I mean the transport, like the idea of, I know some people are like, yeah, I will just get to the airport like half an hour before. I will just get to the airport like half an hour before. And I'm sort of like shaking like, yeah, that stresses me out. That just 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 stresses me out. That stresses me out. 그건 스트레스밖에. That stresses me out. That stresses me out. That just stresses me out.
But find some interesting thing.
So yeah, I'm definitely a planner. I like scheduling and things like that. I agree with my profile more or less, as I said before. One thing I really like about the profile is the inner
travel. Of course, when I'm going from point A to point B, I like to
day. But I have to say that when I'm like traveling, I mean the transport, like the idea of. I know some people who are like, yeah, I'll just get to the airport like half an hour before. And I'm sort of like shaking.
Oh yeah, that stresses me out.
That just stresses me out. I'm definitely
That just stresses me out. So I'm definitely a planner. I like scheduling and things like that. I agree with my profile more or less. I agree with my profile more or less. 거의 동의. As I said before, one thing I really liked about the profile is the inner world. So this is one thing that it comes out a lot, that I have a very rich inner world. Maybe some of the listeners are like this as well, but I feel like there's a part of me that nobody will know, not even a partner, my family, my best friend. There's like always a little part of me that is like just for me. It's really hard to describe. I'm always thinking about things in my head. Like whenever I'm doing anything, I'm always thinking about XYZ, I don't know, whatever. So I have a very rich inner world that is kind of it's like a secret world. It's really hard to describe, but that's one of the things that stands out for me in that profile that really rings true when I think about my personality and what I'm like. Yeah, that's interesting. I remember those kind of questions coming up on personality test, asking me about imagination and inner world and that kind of thing. And it was just a little bit difficult for me to answer them just before. I don't have a standard. Like it's hard to answer the question like, are you a very imaginative person? Are you a very imaginative person? It's like, do I imagine? It's like, do I imagine? Yeah, but am I more imaginative? Am I more imaginative than you? I have no idea, right? I don't know where that standard is, how to compare. So those questions were really difficult for me to answer, but I guess maybe that indicates something, right? If you know very innately, like, yeah, I'm a really imaginative person. I have this world to myself that I feel like is my own. 나만의 세상이 있는 것 같다. I have this world to myself that I feel like is my own. Then you could really easily answer that question, and because I guess I don't, then maybe that tells me something about my level of imagination. Maybe, I don't know. It's just one thing that stood out for me a lot, and they asked you lots of different questions. We were talking about this, that, there are obviously criticism about these types of tests. 이거에 대해서 there are obviously criticisms about this type of test. There are obviously 분명히 이걸 안 믿는 사람들도 있을 거야. There are obviously criticism about this type of test, but I think they are good at getting a kind of broad brush. What are you like in some certain situations, and they can be actually really useful for figuring out, especially with people that you work with on teams, where they are, and maybe the best way to interact with them, or maybe why they might be reacting in a certain way that you don't understand, because you might be like, I don't know why they always do this. 왜 맨날 저러는지 모르겠어. I don't know why they always do this. I don't know why they always do this. I don't know why they always do this. Or I don't know why they find that offensive. 기분 나빠하지? I don't know why they find that offensive. 왜 기분 나빠해? I don't know why you find that offensive. 난 네가 왜 기분 나빠하는지 모르겠어. I don't know why you find that offensive. I don't know why you find that offensive. I don't know why he finds that offensive. I don't know why you always do like that. I don't know why you always do this. I don't know why you always do this. Why they are so sensitive about this, so sensitive about. I'm a little bit sensitive about others' opinion. I'm a little bit sensitive about 왜 이렇게 민감한지 모르겠네. Why they are so sensitive about this. So doing these types of tests, I think, can be really useful. But also, I wouldn't read too much into it.
For me, it's really hard to describe. I'm always thinking about
very innately, like, yeah, I'm a
careful, like I said before, self-fulfilling prophecy, and they can be actually really useful for figuring out, especially with people that you work with on teams, where they are and maybe the best way to interact with them, or maybe why they might be reacting in a certain way that you don't understand. You might be like, I don't know why they always do this, or I don't know why they find that offensive. Or why they're so sensitive about this. So doing these types of tests, I think, can be really useful, but also I wouldn't read too much into it.
I wouldn't read too much into it. 너무 빠져들지 말고 깊게 생각하진 않을 거야. I wouldn't read too much into it. 깊게 생각하진 않았고 깊은 의미를 두지는 않았고 I wouldn't read it too much into it. You have to be careful, like I said before, self-fulfilling prophecy. You are not just your profile on this test. You know, there's much more to you as a person. There's much more to you as a person than that.
Have to be careful, like I said before, self-fulfilling prophecy.
Self-fulfilling
you are
prophecy,
not just your profile on this test. You know, there's much more to you as a person than that. But I do.
There's much more to you as a person than that. But I do think I do love doing these type of things though. Any opportunity to do like a
I do love doing these types of things though. Any opportunity to do like a personality test at work on a team building day, I was like, yeah, I'll do it. I love it. I think it's fun.
Have you ever done one with a professional that was administered by a psychologist or a doctor or somebody who had a deep understanding of these kinds of tests?
Yeah, I have.
Have you ever done one with a professional that was administered by a psychologist or a doctor or somebody who had a deep understanding of this kind of test? Psychologist, professional. Have you ever done one with professional that was administered by psychologist or doctor or somebody who had a deep understanding of this kind of test? Yeah, I have actually, and I got the same result. I got the same result. 같은 결과가 나왔어. I got the same result. I've done a very light version. I got the same result. 같은 결과가 나왔어. I got the same result. I've done a very light version. I've done the really in-depth one as well. 엄청 간단한 것도 해보고 엄청 자세한 것도 해봤다. I've done the really in-depth one as well. And I've done other types of, there's different ones available that give you, different things, but they are all more or less the same. 거의 같았어. They are all 전부 다. They are all more or less the same. 거의 다 같았어. They are all the same. 전부 다 같았어. They are all the same. 다 같았다. 거의 같았다. More or less. They are all more or less the same. It's just kind of how they package it, but yeah, I've done it with somebody quite thoroughly, and it was the INFJ every time. So yeah, I definitely in the box. So stepping back just a little bit, instead of talking about our individual personalities, I want to get your perspective. 너의 의견을 묻고 싶어. I want to get your perspective. 네 생각을 묻고 싶어. I want to get your perspective. I want to get your perspective. 이 생각을 듣고 싶은데, on the MBTI itself, because the reason that we are talking about it here today is one of our listeners named Chae Young. She wrote to us on Instagram actually and asked us to talk about this topic, and she is from Korea, and I know that is huge in Korea. 이게 한국에서 되게 유행이야. 엄청. I know that is huge in Korea. It's very popular topic of conversation. 엄청 대화 주제로 많이 하는 얘기다. It's a very popular topic of conversation. Recently, I met a couple of friends and they were asking me about my MBTI. They were asking me about my MBTI. I've had my students ask me about it. Sometimes even in the English classes that I teach, my students will introduce themselves with their MBTI as part of their self-introduction. Introduce themselves with the MBTI. Introduce myself with my MBTI as part of my self-introduction. So it's extremely popular here in Korea. 엄청 유행이야. It's extremely popular here in Korea. I know that in Canada it's also popular, but more for what like you were saying about team building, corporate world. I'm wondering, as someone who's living in Spain, as someone who's from the UK, in these two countries, is the MBTI very, very popular? In the USA, is the MBTI very popular? So based on my knowledge of the UK, because actually in Spain I haven't worked in a Spanish company, so my knowledge would be about the UK. But yeah, in the UK it's super popular, and it's interesting that you mentioned that people use it as part of their introduction, and it kind of becomes like talking point, a discussion point, like, oh, which one are you, which profile are you, and you're like, oh, I'm an INFJ, what are you, which one are you, which profile are you? No, 어떤 profile, 어떤 거? I'm an INFJ, what are you? No, what are you? I have heard that people really like to use it as a form of telling people who they are. But again, I think that it's like a double-edged sword, because you can say a double-edged sword. You can say, oh, I'm this, and then people will react to you based on that. 사람들이 그걸로 어떻게 반응할 거야. And then people will react to you based on that, rather than actually getting to know you and forming an opinion about you. Do you know what I mean? So if I say to you, I'm an INFJ, you're like, oh, Anna's introverted. So, I don't know, maybe because people always think introverted boring, and I'm sick of it. It doesn't mean that you're boring just because you're introverted. I think it has such a bad rap, so it's like good, but also I can see how people might change their reaction based on you saying that. Yeah, that's classic definition of the quiet introvert is not really accurate, because we are two chatterboxes here on Chatterbox talking a lot, and we both said that we are introverted. And I like the expression that you used just a moment ago, a double-edged sword. Could you break that down and just explain what that idiom means to everyone? Could you break that down and just explain what it means? Just explain what that idiom means, what it means to everyone. Could you break that down and just explain? Could you break that down and just explain what that idiom means to everyone? If something is a double-edged sword, yeah, it's a great expression and we use it a lot when we are debating topics. We use it a lot. 뭐 할 때 많이 써? We use it a lot when we're debating topics. We use it a lot when we are debating topics, and basically what it means is that there's a good side and bad side. Essentially, there's a good side and a bad side. 좋은 점도 있고 나쁜 점도 있고. There's a good things and bad things. 좋은 것도 있고 나쁜 것도 있고. It's a good one. It's a good one to know. You will notice people using it a lot. You will notice people using it a lot when talking about different topics. You will notice people using it a lot when we're talking about different topics. You will notice people using it a lot when we're talking about different topics, because normally things have something good and something bad. 보통은 다들 좋은 점도 있고 나쁜 점도 있잖아. Because normally 일반적으로 things have something good, something bad. So it's a really nice way when you are debating with people to express what you want to say. Yeah, we're comparing things. Sometimes it can be a little awkward to compare things in that kind of situation. You could say, awkward to compare. You could say there's pros and cons, or there's pluses and minuses, but personally, I never liked that expression, pluses and minuses. It sounds a little bit awkward, but a double-edged sword is a nice expression to use when something has good points and some bad points about it, or when it can be helpful or hurtful, that kind of situation. Hurtful. 유용하거나 hurtful. Hurtful. 마음을 상하게 하는. 아프게 하는. 그게 도움이 됐거나 마음이 상했거나. helpful. So to finish up, Andrew, I thought it'd be interesting we talked about what we like, but if you could change any aspect of your personality, what would you change? If you could change any aspect of your personality, what would you change? If you could change any aspect of your personality, what would you change? Well, now that I know that I walked around feeling more stressed out than most people, I think I would have to say that I want to change that. If I could not worry or stress out about so many things and take life maybe a little bit easier, that sounds pretty good to me. So that result was a little bit surprising, and now that I know that if I could reduce the amount of stress or the impact of stress in life, I think that would be very, very beneficial. How about you, Anna? What would you change? I wouldn't really want to change anything too much. 하고 싶은 게 없다. I wouldn't really want to change. I don't have change too much. I wouldn't really want to change anything too much. I wouldn't really want to change. I wouldn't really want to change anything too much, because if I change something, then I wouldn't quite be me. But I'd love to just see what it's like to be introverted. I'd love to just see what it's like to be extroverted. But I'd love to just see, 그냥 알고 싶어. What it's like, 어떤 건지. What it's like to be extroverted. I'd love to try it and see what it's like. 어떤 건지 알고 싶어. On a day-to-day basis. I'd change it for a day or a couple of days, maybe. I'd love to try it and see what it's like. 어떤 건지 알고 싶어. I'd love to try it and see what it's like. 어떤 건지 알고 싶어. Yeah, well, if we could do that, I think I would like to try on every personality type for a day. I would like to try on every personality type. Try on. I'd like to try on. 해보고 싶어. I would like to. 해보고 싶어. Try on. 해보고 싶을 것 같다. I think I would like to try on every personality type for a day and see what they are like. They would be really, really fascinating. Sure, yeah, everyone. I think that brings us to the end. So we hope that you enjoyed this episode and were able to learn about a lot with us here today. And nice job on getting in your daily dose of English listening practice as well. You guys are doing exactly what you need to do, improve your fluency. So keep up that good work. Keep up that good work. And also thanks again to Taeyang for suggesting that topic. So Andrew and I talked about our MBTI, but we are curious about you. We'd love to know your thoughts about MBTI and personality tests. So visit our website and you can leave a comment on the page for this episode, and you can share your opinion with us and the rest of the Culips community. This episode was made possible thanks to all of our wonderful members and supporters. That brings us to the end of this lesson. Talk to you next time.